George Papadopoulos is a political advisor to Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign and an independent consultant on energy and policy issues to the administration of the 45th President of the United States. He ran for Congress in 2020 parliamentary elections. Simone Mangiante is an Italian lawyer and journalist. She is a creator of a number of high-profile documentaries. She was a part of the infamous FBI investigation about Russian interference in the 2016 United States elections. Mr. Papadopoulos, Mrs. Mangiante, we're very glad to have you in Minsk with us today. So first question, basic. What are your impressions on our country? What have you seen? What have you done?
It's a very safe, clean, identity-rooted country. It was refreshing to be here in many ways. I really experienced a healthy society, and that's something you can breathe as soon as you walk into. And also we had some interesting experience. We dived in the cold water, which was...
It's our tradition.
So I really had the opportunity to connect in this with the people, with your tradition,
and like
absolutely, I felt stronger and more a sort of empowering feeling, a spiritual enlightenment, elevation.
Belarusian.
Yes, so that's the first step toward Belarus. And the second one was to drink a shot of vodka right after the diving in the cold water. So that was...
Mr. Papadopoulos.
I agree with most of what my wife said. On the other hand, I'm an Orthodox Christian myself, as a Greek origin American, and for me, being in a country that values the Orthodox Church and to see how united the people are around their faith and their nation and their identity and their sovereignty, for me is very important. And it's something that I hope that the United States follows and sees this as a model in many ways for what society should be, because the United States used to be a lot like the Belarusian society that I've seen, where people cared about their family, work, husband and wife, children, protecting the family, the central family. And now in the United States, unfortunately, there's a lot of division. The sovereignty is threatened. The border situation is unstable. The church is under attack. There's various agendas in the United States, which makes me look at my country as something that I don't recognize, as somebody who grew up in the United States.
So this is like completely different country from your childhood, yes?
Completely different. And that's something, so when I came here with my wife, this is our second time in Belarus now, it's very comfortable for me because it reminds me of my childhood when the United States cared about these values much more than now.
You know, we Belarusian people and American people have something in common. For example, United States are true to its values, true to its national interests and foreign interests, and Belarus as well. But there's the thing that when Washington doing it, it's like we are bringing democracy, freedom of speech, and when Belarus stands in front of its national interests, it's like you're a bad, you're like a Mordor from Lord of the Rings, and we're Gandalf the White. Why so? This is like double standards or not?
Patriotism is actually an international value. It's the love for your country, the love for your people, and it's something that in America, unfortunately, it's losing its strength in contradiction, and is disintegrating of what a free world is. It's actually the dictatorship of the politically correct, which actually is the opposite of freedom.
The American democracy right now in 21st century, year 2024, is this thing is still exist or no? American democracy.
My career started in Washington working with actually many of the same officials who created the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war. These were George W. Bush officials, George H.W. Bush officials, Ronald Reagan officials. And that was a moment in American history where we did question, as Americans and the world, what can the United States do by bombing countries? Is this how you export democracy? Because you asked about the democracy in America. So when I saw that element of the United States foreign policy and working for years with those exact people who launched this crusade, this American crusade around the world that really diminished the American values, the American image around the world, and actually American security, most importantly. That's when, in 2015, I said the United States and the world needs a change. And that's when I left that thinking and I advised two candidates who were about nationalism, patriotism, ending endless wars, and protecting American sovereignty and not being the police of the world. And I think that is exactly why today, under the Biden administration, we went from 4 years of peace with Trump, where we had no foreign wars, we had stability, we had peace between Russia and the United States, Belarus and the United States. There was at least an attempt to have bilateral relations.
Yesterday, Donald Trump said that if he will win 2024 elections, he can settle Ukrainian conflict in like 24 hours. He said that I know Putin, I know Zelensky, we can in 24 hours put an end to it. How do you think? Is this true? Is like, you know, like a populism to bring supporters to his side?
Donald Trump said, I'm going to look at Ukraine in a bilateral sense. United States, Ukraine, United States, Russia. How can the United States benefit from stability with these countries when it's at a bilateral level? And I think when Trump says, I know Putin, I know Zelensky, I know Lukashenko, I know Xi Jinping in China, he really means that. And these leaders also view the world through his perspective of sovereignty, of populism, of nationalism, of protecting borders, protecting their interests. And I think when he says that he can establish peace, he knows he can. And he has the credibility as the only president of this century not to start a war, that he can create the peace based on that legacy.
But still, in 2016, when he won in elections, we know that he has to say a lot of warm words about Putin. Still, in 2017, he refreshed sanctions against Russia, imposed new sanctions against Russia, against Belarus. He imposed new sanctions. And don't you think that this is like that Trump is not a man of his word?
I believe Trump never had in mind doing any favor. He had in mind one agenda, which was America first. Now, America having a stable relationship with countries like Russia, Ukraine, that have been, mostly Russia have been antagonized for no reason over time, building up this enemy that has no reason to exist, was a mistake. And Trump, to smooth this attitude, was accusing himself to collude with Russia. But one thing you pointed out, his policies were everything but pro-Russia, because his agenda, I could experience living in America, is truly one goal. It's America first.
But you know, Washington has got, Pentagon has got a very strong weapon lobby, a lot of weapon corporations, and we know that right now in Ukraine they're making billions.
Well, but we know also
dollars.
why, and actually it was the object of my first documentary I filmed in Kiev with Igor Lopatonok. Name is The Everlasting Present. We walked through the history of the origin of this transactional attitude always toward the start of the war, the funding of the war of the other side by Joe Biden.
The Mueller report is the official report documenting Russian efforts to interfere in 2016 United States presidential election. The report was criticized for leaving holes in the investigation. However, the document states that Moscow's intervention was illegal, large-scale and systematic. Nevertheless, the prosecution had no direct evidence. George Papadopoulos also acted as one of the main culprits in attempts to build bridges with Russia. The District of Columbia Court sentenced him to prison time, community service and a fine.
Mr. Papadopoulos, question to you. Mueller report in 2016, you are one of the reasons why this report is even existing. So I will ask you straight, are you a Putin's puppet?
I'm absolutely not a Putin puppet. I'm an American citizen who believed in stability between the United States and Russia. It's actually one of the main reasons I did want to advise Donald Trump, because I believe that stability and peace between the United States and former adversaries like China, Russia, Iran is good for America, it's good for the world. So if that makes me a Putin puppet, then I guess I am, but I'm not. And unfortunately, you mentioned the Mueller report. It was a scandalous moment in American history.
And you even went in jail, yeah, for
Yes.
like 14 days,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
I went 11 days. Many other Trump advisors were actually sentenced to prison. His campaign chairman also spent years in prison. General Michael Flynn, a decorated general who was a national security advisor, was sentenced to prison. He was pardoned before he had to go. So it was a very dark moment in American history. And the bottom line of what this really was, it was about controlling Donald Trump and affecting his governing of foreign policy. And that means the military-industrial complex, and it's about control. Because if you had a candidate like Trump who was a businessman, and that's something that's very important when we talk about the transactions, businessman instead of a forever politician who has no other reason except to cause wars. So that's where we faced. Donald Trump succeeded. I came out of it free, fortunately, but America is still dangerously
Trump pardoned
affected.
you, yes?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Trump pardoned me. He pardoned some of the others, and we're still affected, unfortunately, in the United States because of this. The support for the FBI is at record lows. Americans don't have faith in the system, in the rule of law, and in my opinion, that is the most dangerous impact of what the FBI and Mueller did to the United States, is corroding the rule of law and the institutions, and
So
that's
it was
a generational
critical
issue.
damage to American
Critical.
law system, yeah?
Critical damage.
On January 6, 2021, a crowd of peaceful protesters marched on the US Capitol to express dissatisfaction with the fraud of the presidential election. At this time, at a joint session of Congress, the electors had to approve the results of the vote. The police violently dispersed the protest, killed several civilians. Electoral colleague confirmed Joe Biden as president and accused Donald Trump of incitement of insurrection. The court case has been going on for several years.
And I'd like to talk to you to both of you about another critical situation. It's January 6th. Yeah, let's call it March on Washington 2.0. There was a lot of people who went to prison for 22 years. The organization Proud Boys. But I'd like to ask you about Ashley Babbitt. He was shot. As I know, she was a war hero. She was serving in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and then the police of Washington said that this was an accident, and if they don't shoot her, she can shoot some of the members of Congress. So how do you think? Is this real how justice has to work? Because again, I'll bring some bridge to Belarus. Protests in Belarus 2020. American officials, state secretary, even Trump said that this is a terrible event in Belarus, but we had here really violent episodes. They said that this is a peaceful protesters, and in Washington it was like inner terrorists, Biden said about them. Why these double standards? Where's the truth? Where's the truth about this 6th January?
In both we have interference of Western actors trying to wind up people towards certain act to build up the illusion of a certain political perception. January 6th is the same. We have this huge crowd of Trump supporters, and we have evidence of FBI agent purposely infiltrating this crowd to wind them up, not committing violent acts, but simply pushing their limits toward entering in the Capitol. So we have actually video on YouTube of this federal agent who's saying, break into the Capitol, break into the Capitol. Mm-hmm. So we have players, again, that are utilizing crowds to create the political perception of a reality that doesn't exist.
So they try to set up Trump, yes?
Which is the reality that doesn't exist, that all Trump supporters, all Trump advisors under the Mueller probe were criminals, right? We had to create the perception of criminals around Trump. Then later on, at the end of this presidency, we want to create the perception of his followers, of his supporters as an insurrectionist. We know the technique is abused by the Western world through Soros as well, and now we have the FBI agents involved, and it's all about getting to the roots of.
So as I understand, FBI are really working more closely with Democrats. No?
It's a completely controlled by the democratic apparatus. There is nobody wants Trump because he's an independent leader. Doesn't fit the deep state agenda. He's been targeted for being a dictator, a fascist, every possible name on the book, simply for loving his country, and that's the truth.
You mentioned that Trump is an independent leader with his own opinion, and you know, a few years back, maybe 5 years back, Trump and our president Alexander Lukashenko, they were always comprising them. So what do you heard about Lukashenko? What do you know about his policy, his opinion on world events?
Well, I judge a leader from his country, and the impression I had of Belarus is excellent. All I know about Lukashenko from the media is misinformation. All I know about him visiting his country is that he's an excellent leader.
If you watch the American media, they call Putin, Lukashenko, the Iranian leadership, China's leadership.
Dictators,
authoritarian
leaders.
Everybody who goes against the globalist agenda or against the interests of this agenda, including the military-industrial complex, becomes a dictator, an authoritarian, and it's something, unfortunately, for them, the American people are seeing through. And going back to what Simona said about January 6th and these setups, this has been the disturbing trend that we have seen, and the American people are seeing, that when there is an individual who wants to fight back against these corrupt actions, against making America enemies with various countries, the deep state goes and sets people up, they infiltrate, and they try to destabilize America from within. Now, unfortunately, they can't do it anymore because so much has become public, and I think that's why January 6th even happened. I think a lot of what January 6th was about how Mueller destabilized the Trump administration. People saw that the FBI was weaponized against him, and then they said they're trying to do it in the election now. That's how it resulted in many questions. People questioned the results, Trump himself questioned the results, and the rest became history. So that's unfortunately what we have seen from the America and how it deals with the rest of the world. But my opinion of Lukashenko is what Simona said. I determine a country by the people, what I see from the ground, and this is a wonderful country. It's a country that I think is patriotic.
He annoys so much White House.
He annoys it because it cares for its people, doesn't care for their agenda. And that's why it annoys them so much. We need more strong leader like Lukashenko actually in the world, and I'm pretty confident to make this statement because I really believe it.
Before a global question about American elections in this year, let's talk about your strong leader, Joe Biden. What can
Sorry, is that a joke?
For us, it's like for us, we're on the other side of the world, yeah, but he's like a joke.
He's a joke.
He's shaking hands with air. He ran away from Eastern Rabbit. He said that mortgage rates are lower, but they are higher. So what's the deal with him, and does he really the only Democrat that can go to elections right now?
Is a comfortable puppet to maneuver and who is compromised.
Just like a mascot, yeah?
Actually, the mascot who is highly compromised by his facts of corruption that have emerged during multiple investigations. One of them started in Ukraine that led to Washington, already at the time of the Vice President Obama, when he was a Vice President under Obama administration. So evidence that Congress, United States, and the Department of Justice seems to ignore and neglect to look into very sensational facts that need to be addressed.
And I think this is outrageous that he's got Hunter, this is very scandalous son, notebooks, all these drugs, and the American law system didn't do anything about it. About his connections with China.
Well, they did something about it. They are prosecuting and persecuting whoever looked into this laptop, whoever carried this investigation, including Rudy Giuliani, who was targeted for being an Ukrainian agent simply for looking into piece of evidence incriminating the Biden's family in Ukraine and talking about Burisma and all the money laundering scheme. And myself, I am targeted for carrying my journalistic work and exposing those facts in the documentaries as a Kremlin agent, of course. Agenda becomes Russian propaganda. So I would say it's a deflection which is pretty pathetic and simplistic at the same time.
I
Nothing to add. Okay, well, I will ask another question. Trying to read some of the American media, of British media, and there's a sense of like Biden is a saint, and Trump is a devil, is a real devil. And I'd like to ask you, is there freedom of speech, freedom of your own opinion in US? Because again, when they attacked Belarus, some diplomats, Western, they said that we don't have freedom of speech, we don't have freedom of mind. There's always, there's everywhere KGB agents. So in America, what's going on right now with this freedom famous?
I explained that the rule of law has been affected in the United States. People are worried about the institutions and the FBI, and even how the system will even continue based on the corruption of the federal apparatus. The same thing goes with the media, unfortunately. Some in the United States media call Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, former Soviet countries as state-run media, Pravda, propaganda, no real media, it's all fake news. They specifically take orders from the intelligence community and the White House, the Democrat leadership.
So they're not independent,
absolutely
as they
not.
used to say.
Absolutely not, and I could say that unequivocally. They're not independent. They specifically smear conservatives. They specifically do the bidding of the Democrats and the intelligence community and the military, and they have been one of the most important tools of the Democrats.
And Joe Biden, how do you think? In 2021, when he became a president, I remember a cover of a Time magazine where Biden stands in a very gloomy Oval Office. There was fire everywhere, some trash, and there were big signature day one. It means that Biden have to repair all damage done by Trump. So right now we can say that almost his term presidential is over. So how do you think, what Time should put on the cover of its magazine in next January?
I think when they make a new cover next election, it should be Biden sleeping in a bed with Sleepy Joe, with an image of mass illegal migrants from all around the world coming through the Mexico-US border. It should show devastated cities due to the failed economic policies and the inflation and the homelessness and the drug epidemic, which is really destroying American society from within. And the third image should show global conflagration and wars, which we are now seeing in Ukraine, we're seeing between Israel and Hamas, and we're likely going to see between China and Taiwan, and potentially even Iran. So that is what hopefully the Trump administration will clean up.
Of course, there is the reason why this conflict happened is precisely because Joe Biden is sitting in an Oval Office. We wouldn't see the same scenery otherwise, and Ukraine in many ways owns the United States through the leverage they have on Joe Biden. We're talking about Joe Biden already leveraged his influence as Vice President of the United States to place his incompetent son in the field and board of directors of Burisma. And we know once the Prosecutor General Shokin started to look into this corruption of Burisma, he bribed Poroshenko to remove him from office just to avoid this massive exposure to the scandal of the corruption his family is involved into Burisma. So the relationship between Biden, the United States, and Ukraine date of a long time ago. Now we have this escalation of the world is fighting Russia over there through Ukraine. Using his influence as President of the United States, is presenting to the world the fight for independence of Ukraine, which, when we look into Ukraine, is a highly corrupted country. It neglects completely the existence of a phenomenon of the nationalists, Ukrainian nationalists who are Nazi.
Right now it's a USA-centric world, and Moscow, Beijing, they want to make a multipolar world. But does the United States ready to give it some of its leverages?
One of the most important issues about the fall of the American empire and the rise of the multipolar world were the sanctions that were imposed on Russia, and I'll explain why. Most countries in the global south, the BRICS countries, they saw what sanctions mean, and that means that with the United States dollar as the reserve currency, they can then find their own state reserves under sanction and frozen, and that would destabilize their economies. So one of the biggest problems of the United States was actually imposing sanctions on Russia, because that made these other countries now say, wait a minute, if the United States is in charge of the world and they have the reserve currency, look what they can do to us now. And I think that's why China, India, Saudi Arabia, Russia, South Africa, Brazil have all begun to work and collaborate in this new multipolar world to establish BRICS, establish a different currency, and to trade in their own currencies instead of the US dollar, which I think not enough people are focusing on in the United States.
But you, as an American citizen, yes, are you okay with that fact that that United States are no longer the main country in the world? Are you okay with that?
Drawing the European Union to following these blind policies which are completely counterproductive. I make an example about Italy. There is absolutely no reason why Italy, who has been one of the biggest economic partners with Russia, who imports gas from Russia, Germany as well, it would implement a sanction to Russia.
A few days before, United States, they excluded Russian potash fertilizers from a blacklist because they put these fertilizers into the essential goods list, so they're not under sanctions.
We are self-sabotaging our economies, even because we sometimes forget the world is much bigger than the Western portion, and there is markets are huge out there that doesn't include us.
A lot of media, a lot of Democrats, they were trying to cancel Donald Trump. There was a lot of trials. They said that he is a fraud, that he's have some problems with his real estate. Still, he, as I know, he won caucuses in Iowa, yes, and now he is going to New Hampshire, and maybe he will win there too. So I'm talking about elections. So what do you think? Donald Trump is the real number one candidate from Republican Party for the elections?
First thing, in 2016, there was election interference. It was subtle election interference with the FBI, with MI6, what happened to me, what happened to Trump, all of these countries coalescing around him to sabotage him and to frame him. Now, in this election, it's interference, but it's overt. The Department of Justice now is so weaponized against him, where they're leveling any charges against a former president for the first time in history without basis.
I think Trump is the winning horse, if I can use this expression. I see the winner there. If
you put your money on him, yeah?
Yes, exactly.
The results don't lie. The results don't lie. We have to be results-oriented.
Look, Trump is a popular candidate, yes, but we had 2016 Mueller report, all these allegations about Russian connection. Why not? If they don't like the results, they can say that this is a fraud, this is a Kremlin's hand.
They will. They already started. They have, as I said, they should become a little more creative. Because by now we still have the same one, which is Russia, Russia, Russia. The mantra, their obsession.
So they waking up in the morning and Russia.
Russia, Russia, Russia. And they even say have a Russian accent. That, you know, like they hear and feel and see Russia everywhere. I believe Trump is going to be the next president. My only doubts are in the manipulation of their electoral system, which is everything but guaranteed. It's, I think, one of the few countries in the world where you don't need an ID to vote. And you can do it remotely from home through an electronic system. This should be changed.
President Lukashenko, in June 2023, journalists asked him about elections in USA, and he said that it's a very interesting but messy show. Do you agree with him?
100%.
Yeah. And it's a lot because of the situations with the various states. For example, if you're a Democrat state, for example, New York or California or Illinois, and your local government are Democrats and have interests in Joe Biden winning, you can be corrupted to assure that you throw out votes of Republicans, put them in, and that's what Trump is talking about. I think even Vladimir Putin went viral recently talking about how bizarre this voting system is in America, because that's what's happening and why so many people are now questioning the system, the rule of law, the integrity of the democratic process. So this is something that America once, used to bomb countries to export democracy can't even make sure its own democracy is secure at home.
Our foreign policy, Belarusian, is like we're like a big teddy bear, and we're always saying, come on, let's be friends, let's have a peace. We were trying for 8 years to make some kind of a peace agreement for Ukraine, but it didn't work. How do you think why it didn't work, and why peace today is not in trend, I would say?
Because they're ruled by other interests. They largely proved to be ruled by other interests than peace. And to make peace, you have to be two, in terms of bilateral peace.
Ukraine, on the other hand, from what I have seen, from seeing Simona's documentaries there, they decided to go completely in with the West, with NATO, with the United States military, to simply be a launching pad against Russia.
How do you think, what do America, United States, and maybe American citizens can learn from us, from Belarusian people?
The respect for your people, for your country's safety, love or your identity, and actually care for your people. Having a healthy society. Very happy to be an ambassador for that.
We're glad to help if you let us do it.
Absolutely.
Having a healthy society results in a healthy foreign policy. And my understanding of how I see Belarus and the leader here behave is he secures the interests of his people first, and that is making sure he does not engage in endless conflict with neighbors and far away. And that has been the theme of this conversation. The world would be a much more stable and prosperous place instead of looking for conflict with countries near and far.
Mr. Papadopoulos and Mrs. Mangiante, thank you very much for a very interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.